You know what's frustrating? When people are interested, but revenue still feels random. You're getting referrals, views, inquiries, maybe even book calls, but every month still feels like you're starting over. So naturally, you think, I need more leads. I need better ads. I need to post more. I need a new funnel. But in a lot of cases, you don't need more leads. You need fewer leaks because the people who already see you are not being moved through a clear enough buying journey. And once you see that, the whole problem starts to look very different. You may not have a lead problem. You have a journey problem. Because if you think you have a lead problem, you'll keep chasing more attention, more content, more ads, more outreach, more tactics. But if the real issue is the sales journey, more attention just sends more people into a broken path. And that's the part that can drive you crazy. Because from the outside, it looks like things are happening. People are watching, people are asking questions, people are booking calls, but the revenue still doesn't match the activity. That's usually a sign that the issue isn't just traffic. It's what happens after someone becomes interested. So in this video, I'm going to show you the 3 places to look before you spend more money on ads, content, or lead generation. And I'll use a real client example to show you how these leaks actually show up. Here's the first big shift. Revenue doesn't come from leads. Revenue comes from a sequence of decisions. Someone has to notice you. They have to understand what you do. Then they have to believe you can help. Then they have to care enough about the problem to act now. Then they have to take the next step. They have to show up. Then they have to trust the offer enough to buy. That's a lot of small decisions. And most businesses are losing people somewhere in that sequence. But because they can't clearly see where the leak is, they blame the easiest thing to blame: the ads, the algorithm, the market, the leads. But a lot of the time, the issue is not that the audience is bad. It's that the journey is broken. So let's break that down into 3 layers: clarity, conversion, consistency. We have an amazing client. This client already had demand. People knew them. Referrals came in. Conversations were happening. So the problem was not nobody wants this. The problem was that the process was living in the founder's head. Follow-up depended on memory. Book calls did not have a strong pre-call journey. Interested prospects had no clear next step. So demand existed, but interest did not have a reliable path to become revenue. And that might be true in your business too. The first leak is clarity. And here's a simple way to spot it. If people need a long explanation before they understand your offer, you probably have a clarity leak. A lot of expert-led businesses explain what they do from their own point of view. They talk about the service, the sessions, the process, the method, the tools. And all of that may be true, but it's not always what the buyer needs to hear first, because buyers don't usually wake up wanting a process. They wake up wanting relief from a problem. They want certainty, less confusion, a result. They want to feel like, okay, this person gets it. So with this client, the first shift was moving away from selling activity and toward communicating a clearer outcome. Not hype, not an inflated promise, just a clearer value. Who is this for? What problem are we solving? Why does it matter now? Why is this approach different? What's the next step? Because when the buying decision is foggy, people delay. They say, I'll think about it, I'll come back later, let me compare a few options, or they just disappear. And then we call them bad leads. But often, they were not bad leads. They were unclear leads. They didn't have enough clarity to move. That was the first fix. Make the offer easier to understand, make the right person see themselves in it faster, and make the next step obvious. And just quickly, if you're listening to this and thinking, okay, I can already see a few leaks in my own sales journey, I'll put a link below where you can request a business growth audit. That's where we look at the path from offer to funnel to book call to follow-up and help you spot the biggest constraint. But even if you don't click that, keep watching this next part, because this is where a lot of businesses lose good prospects without realizing it. The second leak is conversion. And this is where most people misdiagnose the problem. They think conversion means the sales call, but conversion starts much earlier than that. Conversion starts the moment someone sees you and begins deciding whether you're relevant to them. The post is a conversion point. The ad is a conversion point. The landing page is a conversion point. The headline is a conversion point. The application, the booking page, the reminder emails, everyone is a conversion point, and every step either increases trust or creates confusion. And if there's a gap between interest and action, people fall through it. For example, someone watches your video and thinks, this sounds interesting. They click your page, but the page doesn't make the offer clear. So they hesitate. They scroll for a few seconds, they get distracted, they leave. That wasn't necessarily a bad lead, that was a broken step in the journey. Or someone books a call, but they don't get enough context before the call. They don't get reminded properly. They don't feel committed. They don't show up. Again, that's not a lead problem, that's a journey problem. So with this client, we looked at what happened between someone becoming interested and someone becoming a serious sales opportunity. That middle section is where so many businesses leak revenue. A weak headline, vague call to action, a booking page that feels too casual, no confirmation sequence, no pre-call nurture, no proper follow-up, no pipeline visibility, nothing that makes the next step feel obvious. So we built the missing pieces, not to make it complicated, the opposite, to make the next step obvious. Because a good client acquisition system doesn't create attention. It creates movement. Now, here's a small idea that can change how you look at your whole funnel. Not all friction is bad. Bad friction confuses good prospects. Good friction filters bad fit prospects. That's a huge difference. In this case, one of the leaks was a call quality and show up intent. They could get people interested, but interest doesn't always mean commitment. Some people booked casually, some didn't show up. Some weren't really ready for the conversation. So we looked at the booking journey and asked, how do we make this feel more serious for the right person without making it harder than it needs to be? In this case, one of the things we tested was a small booking fee. Now, I'm not saying every business should do that. That's not the lesson. The lesson is this. You don't always want the easiest possible path. You want the clearest path for the right person. Sometimes removing friction increases volume, but lowers quality. Sometimes adding the right friction lowers volume, but improves commitment. And when you're selling a premium offer, quality matters more than raw volume. That's the difference between lead generation and client acquisition. Lead generation asks, how do we get more people to opt in? Client acquisition asks, how do we help the right people move toward a buying decision? Very different game. The third leak is consistency. And honestly, this is where a lot of the relief comes from, because many businesses are not actually lacking opportunity. They're leaking opportunity. A lead comes in, someone replies 2 days later, a person books a call, they don't get warmed up before the call, someone asks a question, nobody follows up. A good prospect says, can you send me more info? And then they disappear. But because the process lives in someone's head, that founder-led growth, and the founder-led growth can work for a while, but it gets exhausting because everything depends on you remembering, chasing, checking, replying, nudging, and carrying the process manually. So with this client, we moved more of the journey into a visible system, not to make it robotic, to make it reliable. Every opportunity had a stage. Every stage had a next section. Every book call had a reminder. Every no-show had a follow-up. Every interested lead had somewhere to go. And every important metric became easier to see. That's when the business starts to feel calmer. Because instead of waking up and thinking, who do I need to chase today? You can look at the system and see where people are. Predictability isn't just about getting more leads. Predictability comes from knowing what happens next for the prospect and for the business. So if you take one thing from this video, let it be this. Inconsistent revenue usually doesn't get fixed by adding more random tactics. A new ad campaign, new lead magnet, new posting schedule, new DM script, new funnel template. Those things can help, but only if they connect to the rest of the system. Your business doesn't need more disconnected pieces. It needs a connected path. A path where the right person can go from seeing your content to I understand what you do, to this feels relevant to me, to I trust this process, to I'm ready to talk, and to yes, this makes sense. That's the real client acquisition journey. And when that journey is broken, growth feels random. When the journey is connected, growth starts to feel more predictable. Not perfect, not effortless, not magic, just more understandable, more trackable, more fixable. And that gives you something most business owners are missing, a sense of control. And by the way, this is the kind of thing we build for clients and processes for profits. Most agencies focus on the traffic layer, leads, clicks, cost per lead, campaign performance, and those things matter. But we look across the whole revenue journey, the offer, the funnel, booking part, follow-up, sales process, CRM, the numbers, everything. So if you want help finding where interest is turning into lost revenue in your business, the link is below. You can request a business growth audit and it will help you identify the biggest constraint between attention and revenue. Either way, I hope this helped you see the problem differently, because once you stop chasing more leads and start fixing the journey, business starts to feel a lot less random. So before you launch another campaign or post another 30 pieces of content, ask yourself, is my buying journey actually clear enough to turn attention into revenue? Because that question alone might save you months of wasted effort. And in the next video, I'll show you why lead gen ads often bring in leads that never turn into clients and what to fix before you run another campaign. I'll see you there.